Most important thing in my life, is family, and everything is about the future. The idea of being able to bring some change, not overly radical change. A stunning royal upheaval has sent shock waves through Buckingham Palace, and beyond after months of quiet tension and carefully veiled gestures. Prince William's bold decision to cancel Queen Camilla's state visit has ignited unprecedented speculation within royal circles. Insiders describe a silent showdown of wills, one that may redefine the monarchy's balance of power. Every detail, from whispered meetings to the sudden reassignment of duties to Duchess Catherine, hints at a deeper truth beneath the crown's calm surface. So, what truly triggered this royal rupture? Today, we uncover the story Buckingham Palace hoped to contain. The defiance that shook the palace. It began not with decree or command, but with whispers, soft as silk, yet sharp enough to slice through the stillness of Buckingham Palace. They floated beneath crystal chandeliers, glided along polished marble floors, and slipped through gilded corridors where secrets had always found refuge. Servants pretended not to hear. Courtiers repeated only fragments, but the words lingered like perfume in the air. Prince William had said no. At first, no one believed it. It was far too bold, too reckless, too unthinkable. The idea that the heir to the throne would defy the Queen Consort seemed more fantasy than fact. Yet within hours, the whispers spread like wildfire, winding their way from Kensington to Windsor. What began as idle chatter soon grew teeth, and behind every closed door there was the same question. Had he really done it? Camilla's grand state visit, her masterpiece of diplomacy, her moment of triumph had been years in the making. Every gown, every speech, every reception had been chosen with care. It wasn't just a tour. It was a declaration of power. The Queen Consort would stand beneath foreign lights as the monarchy's steadfast compass, the woman who steadied the crown through storm and scrutiny. But all of that unraveled with one deliberate stroke of a pen. A statement was released, brief, emotionless, and cold as stone. Due to scheduling conflicts, the visit has been postponed. Yet behind palace walls, no one was fooled. This was no logistical mishap. It was a quiet act of rebellion, precise and unmistakable. For the first time in living memory, an heir had defied the Queen Consort and won. Disbelief echoed through the palace corridors. Camilla's aides called it humiliation. William's advisers called it a correction. And those who served long enough to know the tone of true change whispered the word that no one dared speak aloud. Reform, what began as a rumor now pulsed through the palace like a heartbeat. The old guard, those loyal to Camilla and the hierarchy she embodied, stiffened in outrage. But the younger courtiers, those who had quietly placed their hopes in William and Catherine, felt something different. Exhilaration. It was as if the air itself had shifted, charged with the scent of a new beginning. In her private study, Camilla sat motionless, her hand resting against the velvet armrest. No tears, no fury, just silence. That silence spoke louder than any outburst could. She had seen this moment coming, perhaps even feared it. The rhythm of power she once controlled was slipping beyond her reach, and beyond the palace gates, the press began to circle. Headlines screamed of upheaval. Power rift at the palace. William overrules the Queen Consort. Future king sends shock waves through Windsor. Yet within the royal walls, no one needed the newspapers to tell them what they already knew. The crown, once steady and unmoving, had begun to tilt, and as the staff exchanged glances in hushed corridors, one phrase spread like a secret prayer. Half in justice, half in awe, the crown is shifting. No one dared to laugh. No one dared to deny it because deep down everyone sensed the truth. Something monumental had begun. and nothing in the House of Windsor would ever be the same again. William's sudden decision to cancel Queen Camilla's state visit sent shock waves through royal circles and beyond. But what could have driven such a bold and unexpected move? Was it a personal choice or a quiet test of his growing power within the monarchy? Now, let's uncover Prince William's calculated act that set the crown ablaze, the silent coup. It did not happen in anger or haste. Prince William's decision was not the reckless act of a restless heir. It was the quiet climax of years of watching, waiting, and enduring. Behind his calm eyes, the weight of the monarchy's contradictions had been gathering for too long. He had seen it grow rigid, trapped beneath layers of old ceremony and whispered secrets. The palace had become a place where truth bowed to tradition and image replaced sincerity. Something, he decided, had to change, and he would be the one to begin it. In the private corridors of Clarence House, that change began to take shape. Meetings, once routine, turned sharp and guarded. Staff whispered in corners, their voices dropping to hushes whenever footsteps passed. Phones that once rang freely vanished from desks, and every message was suddenly filtered, coded, or destroyed. The walls, adorned with portraits of unbroken lineage, now bore witness to a quiet civil war. Aides loyal to the Queen Consort grew nervous. Those aligned with William and Catherine began to move with newfound purpose. The tension was not shouted. It hummed low and dangerous beneath the palace's polished calm. Then came the spark. One morning, a single document surfaced online, official stationery, the royal crest embossed in gold. It was a copy of Camilla's planned state visit to Paris, the same event William had quietly cancelled days before. But it was not the itinerary that caused the storm. It was the line at the bottom, scrolled in unmistakable red ink. Authorization revoked. The image spread across the world before the palace could catch its breath. News anchors interrupted broadcasts. Tabloids lit up with fury and fascination. William overrules Camilla. Palace in crisis, screamed the headlines. Within hours, speculation turned into certainty. An heir had defied the Queen Consort. Behind closed doors, shock gave way to rage. Camilla's private office erupted into chaos. Advisors rushed in and out, pale and tight-lipped, while the Queen Consort sat motionless, the paper clenched in her hand. Decades of careful influence, of calculated diplomacy and quiet power, had crumbled with one signature. "Find out who did this," she ordered, her voice steady but cold. Yet the truth was one she already feared. The ink, the handwriting, the deliberate flourish. It looked unmistakably like William's. Outside, the monarchy's walls trembled. The public devoured every update, every photograph, every theory. Was this the beginning of a royal reckoning? Had the crown itself split in two? Commentators called it rebellion. Insiders called it inevitability. The air around Buckingham felt charged, as if the ghosts of kings past had gathered to watch history shift. And while Camilla's fury echoed through the halls, Catherine stood apart, calm, unshaken, luminous in her stillness. She attended her engagements with quiet grace, her poise unbothered by the chaos consuming others. The press turned their gaze to her, finding in her silence something both comforting and commanding. She did not fight for power. She simply was power, soft, steady, and certain. As the world debated motives and alliances, one truth began to settle, whispered by courtiers who dared speak only in private. William had not acted out of ambition, but conviction. The monarchy had not been attacked. It had been awakened, and in that awakening, Catherine stood not as witness, but as proof. Proof that power, when stripped of noise and pride, could rule through grace alone. The decision to cancel Camilla's visit hints at a deeper long-standing unease about her role in royal affairs. But could this also reveal what the future holds when William finally ascends the throne? Now, let's explore how Prince William's bold embrace of change signals the dawn of a more transformative monarchy. A king in waiting. It was a moment that startled even the most seasoned royal watchers, a glimpse into the mind of the future king that few expected to see so openly. The Prince of Wales, known for his calm restraint and careful diplomacy, had finally spoken with unguarded honesty about the one subject the palace rarely allows to be discussed. Change. The setting was informal, almost deceptively so. Windsor Castle bathed in a soft afternoon light. The conversation taking place between Prince William and actor Eugene Levy for Apple TV pluses the reluctant traveler. Yet, beneath the polite laughter and charming anecdotes, something quietly remarkable unfolded, a rare window into the thoughts of a man destined to wear the crown, a man ready to reshape what that crown means. As the cameras rolled, Levy asked the question that has hovered over William for years. What kind of king will you be? The room fell momentarily still. And then, with a steady voice and eyes that carried both conviction and reflection, the prince replied, "I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda." It sounds like the monarchy will be shifting in a likely different direction. I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda. Change for good, and I embrace that and I enjoy that change. Change for good, and I embrace that. I enjoy that change. I don't fear it. That's the bit that excites me. The idea of being able to bring some change, not overly radical, but changes that I think need to happen. It was more than just a sound bite. It was a declaration. For the first time, William spoke not as a dutiful heir bound by centuries of expectation, but as a leader in waiting, one who understood that the monarchy could no longer survive by simply preserving tradition. It had to evolve with its people. Polly's aides later described the interview as the most open they had ever seen him. Gone was the careful, guarded tone of an official statement. Instead, there was warmth, humor, and a quiet confidence that suggested a man fully aware of the world beyond royal walls. To some insiders, it felt like a generational curtain lifting, the dawn of a new kind of monarchy, one shaped by empathy, transparency, and genuine connection. William's words hinted at subtle, thoughtful reform rather than revolution. He spoke of continuity, but also of conscience, of maintaining what works while being unafraid to discard what doesn't. Those who know him best say that his vision for the monarchy is grounded not in grand gestures, but in real relevance. He wants a royal family that listens, that adapts, that feels human again. And perhaps most striking of all was his tone, neither hesitant nor rehearsed, but sincere. There was no trace of defiance, only determination. It was the voice of a man not seeking to rule over a nation, but to serve one differently. Observers could sense the shift instantly. To the public, it was refreshing. To the establishment, quietly unsettling. Change within the monarchy has always been a delicate subject, but William made it sound inevitable, even necessary. When the interview ended, Levy smiled, clearly aware he had witnessed something rare. A future king speaking not from behind a velvet curtain of tradition, but from a place of conviction and heart. And as the world replayed his words, one truth became clear. The next era of the British monarchy will not arrive with thunder or decree, but with William, calm yet resolute, guiding it gently into a new dawn of purpose and possibility. William's transformative change insight reveals a modern vision for the future monarchy. But can the future be practiced now? And what does his action mean for the present day monarchy? Now, let's uncover how Prince William's bold defiance sparked a royal power shift no one could stop. The fracture within the crown, the aftermath of Prince William's decision, was not a passing storm. It was an aftershock that refused to fade. What had begun as a single quiet act of defiance now pulsed through every marble hallway and mirrored chamber of the monarchy. The change was not visible at first, yet it could be felt in the air, thick, uneasy, and charged with something close to fear. Conversations grew shorter, meetings ended with silences that lingered too long, and the one thing that had always held the palace together, trust, was suddenly gone, as if it had never existed at all. Behind the gold-trimmed doors and velvet drapes, the royal facade, once gleaming with the illusion of harmony, began to crack. Through those cracks poured years of suppressed tension, unspoken rivalries, quiet grudges, and long-buried doubts. Every exchange now carried the weight of suspicion. Every smile was measured. Quarters who once navigated routine with practiced grace now moved as though walking through a minefield, uncertain which loyalty might betray them next. Among the queen consort's closest aides, outrage simmered. They whispered of betrayal, calling William's act an unprecedented breach of royal order. They spoke of hierarchy and respect, of how the old ways were being dismantled before their eyes. Yet beneath their anger lay a truth they could not ignore. This was not merely an affront to Camilla's authority. It was a reordering of power itself. William's decision had thrown open a door that had been locked for generations. The old rhythm of the crown, the slow, deliberate beat of tradition, was faltering. King Charles, caught between loyalty to his wife and understanding of his son, tried desperately to contain the growing rift. Behind closed doors, he summoned meetings in hopes of restoring calm, but the firmness in his voice had thinned. His authority, once absolute, now carried hesitation. For the first time in decades, a question hung unspoken among advisers and family alike. A question too dangerous to say aloud, yet impossible to silence. Who now guided the monarchy's future? The king or his heir? In response, the palace machinery began to shift. Schedules were quietly rewritten. Engagements rearranged. Communications between offices grew cautious and cryptic. Press statements, once carefully aligned, began to contradict each other in subtle but telling ways. Camilla withdrew from public view. Her absence explained as a period of rest, but no one believed it. Her retreat was not about fatigue, it was about survival. Into that silence stepped Catherine. Her calm presence filled the void left behind, not by design, but by nature. Her every appearance radiated steadiness. Her every word carried warmth. The contrast between the two women, one retreating, one rising, became impossible to overlook. The public noticed, the courtiers noticed, even the king noticed. To those who clung to the old ways, William's defiance was rebellion, a reckless disruption of royal order. But to the younger generation, it was something else entirely. It was a rebirth. It was a renewal. It was proof that the crown could evolve without losing its light. Prince William's decision signaled a shift within the crown, one that seemed unstoppable. But will Queen Camilla accept this change or quietly resist it? And what could William's bold move mean for his wife, Catherine? Let's find out. The unraveling of power. As the months drifted by, a strange chill began to settle over Buckingham Palace, a quiet coldness that crept into the heart of every corridor. The laughter that once filled the grand rooms now felt hollow, rehearsed. Smiles, once natural and warm, had become deliberate, sculpted carefully for cameras rather than shared between trusted friends. Even the grand chandeliers seemed to shimmer less brightly, as though the very air had grown heavy with things left unsaid. Behind every closed door loyalty had turned fragile, and conversation came laced with caution. King Charles, increasingly weary, sought refuge in diplomacy and distance. His public appearances multiplied. He shook hands, delivered speeches, and smiled for photographers. Each gesture a small attempt to maintain calm in a kingdom quietly dividing. But no number of ribbon cutings or charity galas could mask what was happening inside the palace walls. Beneath the glittering veneer of royal duty, a silent power struggle had taken root, a contest not for the throne itself, but for the soul of the monarchy. At its center stood two women, each powerful in her own way, each aware that only one would define the monarchy's future. Camilla, the queen consort, had spent decades clawing her way from scandal to acceptance. She had faced ridicule, endured whispers, and emerged standing. Her crown a hard-earned triumph over public disdain. For years, she had been the monarchy's steady matriarch, a symbol of endurance and quiet resilience. But time, that cruel and unrelenting judge, had begun to turn against her. The warmth she once commanded was cooling. Her allies, once fiercely loyal, were drifting toward new light, toward Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Catherine's power didn't roar, it radiated. She didn't demand attention, it found her. Where Camilla had fought for her place, Catherine simply seemed to belong. Every gesture she made, every word she spoke carried a sincerity that needed no defense. While Camilla's strength was forged in survival, Catherine's glowed in compassion. Her empathy reached where tradition could not. The media, ever quick to sense a shift, turned their lens toward this quiet transformation. The stories that once praised Camilla's perseverance now celebrated Catherine's poise. Photographs of her kneeling beside children, comforting grieving families, and engaging ordinary people with genuine warmth began to redefine the royal image. She was seen not just as the Princess of Wales, but as a symbol of renewal, a bridge between the monarchy's gilded past and its uncertain future. Inside the palace, Camilla felt the change more deeply than anyone. Alone in her dressing room, she would sometimes pause before the mirror, staring into the face that had once triumphed against every storm. Now that reflection seemed distant, still regal, but somehow diminished. Her defeat hadn't come in scandal or confrontation. It had come softly, like twilight fading into dawn. And as that dawn broke over Buckingham's white towers, its light fell not on the queen consort, but on the princess who would one day reign. Catherine had not taken power, she had become it. Camilla was never overthrown, only overshadowed, and without a single word spoken, the crown had quietly chosen its next queen. But what future awaits Camilla in the shadow of this silent revolution? Now, let's step into the dawn of a new royal era. The crown reborn, power without a throne. By the time spring returned to London, a quiet but unmistakable transformation had swept through the royal world. It didn't arrive with fanfare or decree, but like sunlight after a long winter, soft at first, then radiant and impossible to ignore. The sharp chill that had lingered for years inside Buckingham Palace, the mistrust, the weary smiles, the rehearsed warmth, began to fade. In its place came laughter that didn't sound staged, and a tenderness that felt startlingly real. The people noticed first, where once crowds had gathered out of duty, now they came out of devotion. They weren't there for spectacle or to witness history. They came for her, the woman who had restored belief in the crown simply by being herself. Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Her presence seemed to breathe color back into the gray tapestry of royal life. Every small gesture carried meaning. A hand resting gently on a veteran's arm, a quiet word to a grieving mother, the kind of smile that made strangers feel seen. It wasn't grand speeches or royal proclamations that won hearts, but the quiet humanity behind every act. Catherine didn't perform royalty. She embodied it in its purest form: compassion, dignity, and grace without artifice. The press, long fed on scandal and rivalry, found themselves caught off guard. Tabloids that once hunted flaws now print praise. Headlines that used to divide now celebrate her sincerity. The cameras no longer sought to expose. They sought to capture light. Catherine had turned the lens itself, once the monarchy's fiercest enemy, into her quiet ally. Inside the palace, her influence moved like perfume, subtle but impossible to ignore. Invitations began to change in tone and in purpose. Banquets once filled with titled aristocrats and political elites now welcomed teachers, nurses, and community leaders. Events became less about prestige and more about presence. It was evolution without declaration, a reformation born from empathy, not ego. Courtiers who once served under the Queen Consort's command found themselves instinctively aligning with Catherine's calm authority. There was no need for confrontation. Her leadership didn't demand obedience. It inspired it. Within those marble corridors where hierarchy had ruled for centuries, even whispers turned reverent. It was clear to all who looked closely the crown had quietly found its new center. King Charles watched it unfold with a mix of relief and reflection. He saw in his son and daughter-in-law a future that no longer mirrored the past, but transcended it. William's steadiness, shaped by loss and learning, paired perfectly with Catherine's soft strength. Together, they had become the monarchy's living pulse, a harmony of heart and purpose that no strategy could manufacture. Then came the moment that defined it all. On a golden spring afternoon, sunlight draped the palace balcony as William and Catherine stepped out to greet a roaring crowd. The sound was thunderous, waves of pure affection rolling across the mall, echoing against stone and sky. Flags rippled like fire, cameras flashed like lightning, and for the first time in years, Buckingham Palace seemed to breathe again. Inside, even the walls appeared to listen. The monarchy, long battered by division and doubt, had not fallen. It had evolved. Power no longer glittered in gold or echoed in command. It now moved in the quiet rhythm of Catherine's grace, in the way she stood beside her husband, not behind him, and in the serene certainty that the crown's future had found its voice. As she smiled to the sea of faces below, saying nothing yet meaning everything, the world finally understood. A new chapter had begun. The age of grace was here. What do you make of William's decision? Could it be a sign of a quiet royal power shift? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.